So I don't usually edit my Pure Lunacy videos. I just want to say that I know I said Long Island instead of Ellis Island. Forgive me, interwebs. Ring the bell of shame. It had been a long day, okay? I just wanted to correct that. Welcome to Pure Lunacy. Thanks.
Hey guys, welcome back. This is Pure Lunacy. It's another week and another conversation. I have my wonderful friend. We've known each other since we were babies and freshmen in college. This is my wonderful friend Stephanie. Stephanie, say hello to Pure Lunacy and say hello to the audience.
Hi, how are y'all?
Yes. Stephanie, tell a little bit about yourself, what you do, and just how you're involved with things that are going on.
I am a licensed master social worker under supervision for my clinical license. I'm a mental health therapist in a shelter for undocumented children. I find myself locally trying to advocate for anti-racism. And most of my practice and my focus is trauma focused.
Right. So y'all need to understand, one, the heavy impact of the work that Stephanie does, and she still keeps a bright light. Just understand, this is one of my friends that, when we get together, we get loud. And we get loud in joy, we get loud in happiness, even with the reality of the darkness in the world. What else is going on? So you mentioned, you're assisting with 4 undocumented kids. What are you seeing in your part of town?
Well, a lot of resistance to that. A lot of people that work with me don't tell people where they work. I make it a purpose to tell people where I work because I want to see their faces. Right now, we don't have any kids because the borders are shut down. Yeah. And they're keeping the kids at the border, which we know because they got sued for it. Really bad conditions. Our shelter, I had a vision when I started working here that this is a brand new shelter, that they have trauma when they are in their home country, regardless if they have trauma at home or not. There's community trauma, a lot of gang members. So then they have trauma during their journey. There's a lot of kidnapping, a lot of starvation, just going through muddy water is traumatic. And then they have trauma when they get detained. And so my hope, and I've seen this over and over again in my shelters, when they come to our place, it's like the beginning of a healing place. And so we try to do a holistic approach. So if we see a kid struggling, we're going to do mental health, but we're also going to give them sound machines. We're going to give them a weighted blanket. I'm going to tell the teacher to give them 5 minutes, and they're going to have a signal. We just do whole person. So that's what I've been doing.
That's so important, especially with, what's going on right now. One of the things that I always try to mention is the need for immigration reform. The system, the laws, they're broken. And we see these kids, and it's very easy, and especially in the state that we live in, it's very easy for people to say, well, they're illegal, boot them out. And it's bigger than that, and it's just not, you can't put a Band-Aid on cancer. You can't just say undocumented, illegal, out. What's your perspective? How do you view the conversations we're seeing? I mean, we just heard, I think today, DACA may be discontinued, which is a huge program for kids. And it not only helps these kids who, have undocumented status, it helps the future of our country to have these people be part of our society. What's your take on this stuff that's happening?
As far as DACA, that's just, I mean, they're not criminals. They're just people that can't, like, they didn't ask to come over here. They didn't migrate over here. Their parents brought them here. They probably don't even know Spanish. And if they do know Spanish, they would have to acculturate they wouldn't know the culture over there. They probably never even visited. They're Americans. And the fact that he's trying to do that, the fact that he's using COVID to continue to close the border, I mean, seeking asylum is not illegal. And they're not going through all this because it's a great place at home. If people would just hear like one horror story that I heard. Even like the most, they had a good home life, but this gangs, because they were in a military school, telling them, I'm going to kill your whole family if you don't join the gang. Like, they're not coming to be like, oh, the American dream. Like, yeah, cool, American dream, but no.
You know, and I try to, you know, especially whenever talking about people who are coming and asking for asylum, I think it's important to recognize, you know, people were asking for asylum on Long Island and it hasn't stopped since, right? And before that, I mean, if we look at the foundation of this country, the Pilgrims came here for asylum from persecution. So it's always absurd to me to hear people say, no, we can't allow that. And I was actually part of a convention a little while back, and one of the propositions was to, one, remove the family immigration that would allow families to come together. And then two, one of the propositions was to set a merit-based immigration. And my immediate thought was, well, what were the merits of the Pilgrims who came to this country? What were the merits of the Irish who were starving? Let's stop calling it the Irish famine. Let's call it the Irish starvation, because that's what it really was. You know, so it just, I'll get on a soapbox. You know me. I'll get on a soapbox about this. And I mean, I'm just glad that you're somebody who not only is an advocate, you work with these people.
I do.
You touch their lives.
They're my favorite population. I worked with them post-release. So once they were released to the shelter and they were at their home, I worked with them in Dallas. And I was like, once I become a therapist, I have to be their therapist. And there is just so rewarding. There's not one person that works with us that are like, it's an okay job. Everybody's like, we love our job. The kids cry leaving. We cry. I don't cry. I internally cry when they're leaving. But it's to me, there's a common denominator. The Pilgrims and the Ellis Island?
Long Island. Yeah, Ellis Island. You're right. I said Long Island. My bad. Ellis Island.
I was
for
like,
some reason.
Did I mess up?
You're wrong. I'm right. I was just talking and I said the wrong island.
They're white. They're coming in. It's. I wonder if people are upset that they're brown and coming in. I wonder if that's like the underneath, you know, because we have like unknown, unconscious racism in us, just from everything, what's beauty, what is okay immigration, what's not. I wonder if that's underlying, especially when our presidents are calling them bad hombres. Can't even say hombre right.
Yeah, you know.
I'm still doing this.
Stephanie, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm all a therapist, and I'll be like,
oh, Stephanie. Look, I will say this. Just because, you know, one of the degrees I have is history. Yes. I will say that historically, America has been isolationist, and historically, whether, you know, you look at the immigration of Pilgrims, you look at the immigration of the early 1900s, and you look at the immigration of today, right, or the 1990s to today. Historically, our country has leaned towards isolationism, and historically, it's been anti-immigration. And that's why we start to see some of the trends when it comes to immigration. Like, the best example is looking at the trends of Chinese immigration on our West Coast, and after the railroad train tracks were laid down, the country stopped allowing Chinese to come in, so they opened the doors for Japanese to come in. And then World War II hit, so they shut down the borders to the Japanese and opened the doors to the Chinese. And now we look today and we have COVID-19, and we're starting to see a repeat of history, right, where different groups, different time periods have a surplus of immigrants, and at that time, that group becomes a group that nobody wants. So including the Irish, including the Jewish population.
Okay. Thank you.
I would say this, and this has been studied, I would say that people who are white-skinned in America, who are of immigrant descent, had an easier time assimilating into American culture than people who are of other skin colors or other features. And I think that it sounds harsh whenever folks hear it that way, right? But it's a harsh reality. And I've actually spoken to people who are descendants of you know, Eastern European, Western European countries who came in the early 1900s. And one of the ways of assimilating was having to let go of their culture, let go of their language. And it's sad. It's sad to see that. And it's sad that we see this repetition today with the surplus of immigration population being from Latin America. But I don't think Latinos are going to be letting go of Español y su cultura para la gente. I don't think that you're going to see that.
I'm in rural America, like 5,000 people, rural America. And so our shelter has had the hardest time trying to find Spanish speaking therapists. Because my age group doesn't speak Spanish here. My husband doesn't speak Spanish. And so one day I asked my father-in-law, I was like, why didn't you teach your kids Spanish? Well, when they were growing up, they were actually taken down 3 or 4 grades he wasn't, his parents advocated for him, but other people were sent to another school where lower grades would get punished. So they decided to help their kids. They weren't going to teach them Spanish. So
you see it, and that's what I was trying to say. You know, you see history repeat itself, and it's a sad fact that in America, a country that's so proud of being an immigrant country, a country of dreams, that at every stage of our country, we've had a group of people who are the majority immigrant population that was discriminated against at some point. and you know, like I said, it's easier for some groups to assimilate and become part of the American culture and the American fabric, and others it's not so much. There's no other, you know, easy way to state what is historically fact. And you know, I'll segue into the conversations we're having now. As a professor, I always say it's hard to talk about the reality of the past because the past is messy because people are messy. So how are you, you know, in your community having these conversations, and how are you involved? I know you mentioned that you've been a vocal member, and if you've had to delete people, you delete them.
Yeah.
Social media.
I've unfollowed a lot. I opened up my social media, then I closed it back up because people get on my nerves. But I unfollowed people. The main thing I did was, so there was this girl, this is how small this county is, on Jackson County Facebook page saying that she wanted to do a Black Lives Matter protest, but she wanted it to be silent, and it had to be this. I said, really? A white girl trying to tell me to be silent at my own protest? I ain't going. Well, then everybody got mad because I'm the outsider here. No one knows me. Well, then she started getting death threats from even her own family members. So she was like, I'm not going to do it. I said, I am, and we don't have to be quiet. We're going to be cool. So they continued to say that there was going to be people being shipped in from Houston, like anybody cares to be shipped in from Houston to Edna, 5,000 people again. And so the chief of police who went to my wedding, because my father-in-law is and I do not speak for them. My father-in-law is a municipal judge. So he went to my wedding and he had posted like, I want y'all to have the right to protest. Please protest. So I posted, I was like, let's just come. So we had a lot of people. We had about 100 people, which is a big deal. He said that was the biggest protest he's ever seen.
Wow.
In Edna, we started with Amazing Grace and prayer. People chanted, people sang. We had singing, music, whatever. And then we ended on our knees for 8 minutes. I could do 1 minute, and my knee was hurting so bad. At the 8-minute mark, you could just see like people crying, and like that cop had to like purposely do that. I know I'm not like athletic, but there were some people that I could be like, oh, they could totally handle 8 minutes, but no one could. Like everybody was like, my knee is killing me. So he pushed past his pain to hurt somebody. That was like seriously insane to me.
Yeah.
And then I have found myself sharing, it's Christine Kane and, oh my God, I love her, Dr. Anita Phillips, conversation about racism in the church. I shared it with every pastor that I know. And I was like, can you please do me the favor of just listening to this? And these are all white pastors. And I thought I was going to get like okay. A lot of them thanked me and kind of understood. Even my pastor the next Sunday, which happened to be when Victoria, our bigger city, was going to have a Black Lives Matter protest, asked that the voices that haven't been heard be heard, which caused another controversy at our church because the police officer's wife got mad that he was saying people should go to the Black Lives Matter protest, which he didn't say. So it's kind of been hurtful to be a part, half white, which I don't normally claim, but half white, and to be a part of a church that's multicultural and just see people so insensitive and could care less. And so I've started to think people like me besides my blackness, in spite of my blackness.
And that's the intersectionality of being who we are, right, in this country. And not only identifying with our Afro roots, identifying with our Latin roots, identifying with all the parts of our roots, and still being part of this conversation. What I've faced in certain situations is people have told me that it's not my place to speak. And I've had people tell me that this is not a situation where my voice should count, regardless of whether my roots are Afro or not. I'm Latina, so you're Latina, so you don't get it. Because a lot of people don't know Latin history, and they don't realize that America received, maybe at most 4% of slaves out of Africa. And the country that received the most, that I always repeat, is Brazil.
I said your country.
It's not something we should be proud of, right?
No, but
it's something that, yeah, but we received the most slaves because that's how badly they treated the slaves. They were disposable. So it was like, yeah, just bring in a new batch of people and it's all good. And it's part of our history. And unfortunately, not everyone, but I have seen situations where I've been told to stay in my lane. And you're light bright. Your skin color does not allow you to be part of this conversation. This is not a movement for you. Or if you're going to be part of this movement, get in line. You're not allowed to make any critique. You're allowed to get in line with what the movement is and stay in that lane. Have you faced anything like that? Being an Afro-Latina?
I feel like no, like my friends, like, because I posted this whole thing just to make sure people knew my grandma was Black. I was raised in Panama. I did not ever associate or was culturally understood whiteness. When I came to the United States, since I came to Texas, my vibrant personality goes more with African American community than Mexican community. They're more muted, which is great. I mean, my husband's Mexican. He's muted. We can't have two loud mouths. So, my friends, like all my Black friends, like, girl, you a sister? Why are you even posting this? But I wonder, which is crazy because if we were, like, let's say Black, because I could say Black American.
If we were born and raised here,
there's Black Americans that are our color of skin. So I don't get that.
I think that, and that's why people are, uncomfortable having this conversation while BLM, Black Lives Matter, is occurring. But I think that, in my opinion, this is the moment we should have this conversation, and we should have the conversation about intersectionality in this conversation, because yes, Black Lives Matter, including Black Latino lives, and not only should we address it in the American, community of Black lives, we should address the colorism and the history that we have in our Latin communities, and this is something that you know about, right?
Yes,
Colorism is a
actually
big thing.
I did a chat on it, and then so Devereaux, the company I work for, wanted to do a forum, and I was like, I'm not going to do the typical BML forum. We're all Latinos here. So I'm going to talk about colorism and stuff like that. And every single person had a story. If they're pelo malo, hay que adelantar la raza. You got to up your race.
You got to explain to people what pelo malo is, porque
pelo malo means
todos no entienden español.
I know. I translate the second one, not the first one. Pelo malo is like my hair. It would be considered like anything that's not straight, any feature that's not considered, like, that's not whiteness. So having a wider nose, bigger lips. So beauty is associated with the more white you are on the spectrum, not just your color, but the more white you are on the spectrum, the more beautiful and accepting that you are. Like,
and this is in Latin culture for people.
This is Latino culture.
And Latin culture, this is part of the colorism that we see in our Latin culture.
And you see this in Black culture, but I'll let them speak on that one. But I've heard it too. And then another thing is, like, get out of the sun, you're gonna get black. My Black grandmother said, hay que adelantar la raza, pa negra soy yo. I have to up my race. I'm gonna be the only Black one. So marry a white guy. And so for years I didn't accept my hair, and then I'm like, what? I'm spending how much of my time straightening it, and it still looks like crap.
And it's a big thing. And you know, I had a family member who said, in Portuguese, they're like, Priscila, se você vai casar com pretinho, não casa com pretinho americano. Meaning, Priscilla, if you're gonna marry a Black man,
right,
don't marry an American Black man. Like, it's okay if they're Latino, or, you know. So not only is there the colorism, but there's also a Latin discrimination against Black Americans. Not,
right.
You know, there's
they think they're different.
Oh, you're Latino and Black, okay, but with Latino, you're good. But if you're American moreno, you're American negro, like, no.
It doesn't work.
And that's part of the conversations that we should be having. And there are people who... I
have those conversations with my own family member, and it's hard for Latinos to do that because we are trained to be very respectful, which respectful in Latinx houses means shutting our mouth, which I don't do very well. So I will F it, forget it. I told my mom, I was like, what do you mean que yo me creo? What do you mean that I want to be Black so bad? You are Black. She goes, no, my mom was Black. I'm brown. I'm like, wow. Are we serious? I'm like, Mom, you used to use relaxer in your hair. Like, but it's okay. She doesn't want to accept that part of it. That's fine. It's part of the culture that it's part of the culture that needs to be dissipated. We need to have these conversations, and Latinos need to recognize the racism that we have in our cultures. And it's brought over to America whenever we have our immigrant family members come to America. This push against, I don't want to be too dark, pelo malo. Black, like color, Black skin, Latinos say they're not Black.
Yes.
I'm
Big Papi from Dominican Republic. Big Papi, who is a baseball player, professional baseball player in America. He is a Black man. That man is negro. Y no se crea negro. He does not believe he is a Black man. He is Dominican. And it's crazy to me.
Well, see, and I want to mention racism and colorism. Because the reason why we can't be racist is because we're an oppressed group. And racism, the way it's defined in anti-racist, who's that guy that says How to Be an Anti-Racist? The guy that made that book.
Right.
Well, Google it. So that guy, he describes racism a more systemic thing. We could discriminate against each other, but the racism is where we have the power over. We really don't have power over in this country being a minority. So we have a lot of colorism. I mean, like, and it's sad because it took a long time to accept the brownness and the Blackness of me. I didn't even know I was Black. I could have sworn I was trigueña, and then my hair was too ugly, and then it was just, I had to get out of And I was always wanting to be out in the sun. I had to get out of the sun. It's sad. But we're changing.
Sad, and I agree. And I always tell people this story because I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I was born and raised in Dallas, and I grew up in Pleasant Grove. And at that time, the 90s, there were 3 races, right? There was black, white, Mexican. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Latino, it was Mexican, right?
Right.
And if you looked like me, you were one of 2 things. You were a really light black girl, or if you look like me, you were mixed. And people would treat me poorly, and they would say, oh, you're a really light black girl, you're light skinned, oh, oh, se crea, da, 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 you know, or they would say, oh, you're mixed, your family mixed the races. And this was happening in the 1990s, and it's sad. And I'm like you. I hated my hair. I mean, when we grew up, who did we have to look up to? Like, we had Britney Spears. We had Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson.
And Christina
Everybody had
was
straight hair. Nobody had curly hair, and you'd get made fun of. And I would try to go play hide and seek. One time I played hide and seek on the playground, right? And I'm on the playground, and this little boy goes, "You can't hide from us, Priscilla. Your hair's too big. We'll find you." And I was just like, oh, I hated my hair. I hated my hair because it
was white at one point. I thought it would just be easier, and I guess it would. It would.
And that's the sad thing. We think that it would be easier. We're children.
And I grew up in Panama.
Yes.
But I went to a private American school, so I was pretty much the only like Panamanian brown girl there. Everybody else was like light skin white, and so I don't know. I'm like,
it's sad. It's sad.
I didn't even understand. And you know what was crazy? When I came to the United States, people kept calling me negra and high yellow and yellow bone and
yellow bone.
Yeah, I didn't understand nothing. I was like, what are these people talking about? I knew English, but I didn't know the lingo, right? And then I went back to Panama in 2009. I was telling my friends, I was like, they think I'm black in Panama. And this is me not knowing Afro, like no one's teaching me this. So, and my friends that are black Panamanian, like, you're not black, you're trigueña, you're brown.
Yeah.
Is this like but now I understand it's more of like a non-accepting thing.
Right.
Like, you pay like respects to, I mean, like if you had light blonde hair or you had Mama to see like you turned out with green eyes, we would pay respects to all the whiteness of that. Mm-hmm. We don't pay any respect and we don't recognize any of the brownness. My mom actually told me, hey, you've been in moda before it was in moda. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you had your hair curly before it was popular. And it really is. It really did. And we both did.
Yeah.
We both
because
did.
we got tired of straightening our hair.
we were trying to study and ourselves.
Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. But the damage is there, but I think it's a damage that influenced us both to be, very vocal on who we are and also being vocal in support of all the communities that we are part of, because this is where I say there's intersectionality of who we are. And yes, you can be Latino, and yes, you can be black, and yes, you can be all of these things and have a voice and have a valid voice in it. And yes, right now is the time that we should be speaking on it. Right now is the time that we should have this conversation, because right now is the time that it's all coming to a head, So
it's already ugly. Might as well clean up everything. There's no reason to sweep something under the rug and pick up another. Let's just have surgery. Kind of like, well, I'm not a doctor, but this is the analogy I'm going to use. Kind of like when a doctor opens up, but he sees something else, he's not going to be like, let me sew that back up and I'll get to it next week. Now he's going to take all the mess out. So let's just take all the mess out.
Let's talk about it.
It already hurts. Let's just completely take it out.
Yeah. And that's why, and this is where I guess you and I, like, we were both discussing on our own Black Lives Matter, and I made a post and I made a video saying, Black Lives Matter needs to include all Black lives. And a lot of people took it as me, being anti-Black lives because I discussing and yes, critiquing. We can't. Black Lives Matter is a movement. Yes, the statement stands true, but we can't not critique what we see before us. For example, one of the things that I do not agree with is that the people who have formally founded the organization outside of the statement, a lot of them are Marxist. I'm not going to stand behind that. I know what socialism and Marxism has done to my Latin American heritage. But people have said, you are light skinned, you're yellow bones, so this isn't the movement for you because people who are darker than you get treated worse than you, so it's not your place. And
do they say that to their light skinned cousin or what? I mean, I'm sure when a cop stops me, they're not like, wait, are you Latino? No, they're treating me the same way.
And that's the craziness of the conversation that we're having today. And people are so uncomfortable having these conversations. And that's why we have Pure Lunacy that I'm doing. That's why we have you speaking out in your community while you continue the good work as a therapist and working in your social work. You're making a huge influence. And I think that it's awesome. What else do you have anything else you would like to contribute or say? Or
I think a lot, of course, I'm going to bring it back to self-care. And I think self-care is an overly used term to mean like I'm going to get a French manicure, but that's fine if it makes me feel good. But I just want people to understand, and this I got from Dr. Anita Phillips. Y'all need to listen to her. But she says this is a relay marathon. Don't feel like you have to do the work all the time. Because at first when this was happening, I was like 24/7 trying to educate people. And then I realized, you know what? They Google stuff to make Pinterest stuff. They could Google this. So when they ask me, I'll give a simple 1-2 answer, and then I'll send them resources, even though I don't have to. And I'm going to, in the moment that I'm too tired, someone else can pick up my slack and vice versa.
right.
So really just taking a pause from the movement, not the movement like, oh, now I hate Black lives, not like that, but more like a pause from like fighting full fights, because it's tiring and exhausting. It's really, really sad when you see people that you thought loved you and you thought like understood you post a picture of a black dog and say, this Black life matters.
Wow.
That's a close family member of mine, by the way. And like stuff like that, you just gotta pause and really whatever works for you. I feel like when everything that works has to do with mind and body, like getting in sync and getting out distractions. So meditation, praying, singing, yoga, YouTube it. It'll be great. Mindfulness.
She said YouTube it. Take some time.
Take some time to YouTube it and find.
You know all the stats to fantasy football. You know everything Kim Kardashian is doing in her life with Kanye. Right. Take some time away from that and look into what is useful in your life.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And that's why I quit answering all white people's questions and I started sending videos depending on the situation. Like, so if they were Christian, I would send them a Christian video explaining it. But I stopped because I'm like, I'm not going to be your token black friend that you quote. And you could Google everything else you want to Google. You could put some work into this.
It takes work. And I want to add something because most people probably don't know this. You're a preacher's kid. I'm a preacher's kid. Sometimes we were the stereotypical preacher's kid. Jesus saves. Hallelujah.
I mean, like, what I tell people, I'm like, I'm a Christian. I'm just not your, like, typical. I mean, like, I sing in the worship team, but I know I get on people's nerves when we go backstage and I'm talking about liberal stuff. Like, I'm like, did you just make a misogynistic comment? Did you just say riots instead of protests? Because that's very racist. I don't care. I could be a Christian.
And one of the things that I've said before, and, I'll say now is, I always say this. the most racist moment in America occurs every Sunday morning, when we Christians come together to worship Jesus, to worship God. How have you seen these conversations occur in your congregation and your Christian community?
My pastor did mention a little thing. That's it. I haven't heard it again. He mentioned a few things. I think he got a lot of backlash. I don't know. Wasn't going to sit there and ask him. I felt like if he wanted everybody to know about the backlash he received, he would tell everybody. Mm-hmm. But I could just tell by the side-eye comments on Facebook feed that he was getting a lot of backlash. But he was very open and trying to understand what was going on, which was important to me. But I mean, I feel like multicultural churches are having a hard time. Because you still have the white people that don't understand it and are mad. And you have the black people that are sick of it. And then it's just a hard time for them. And, one thing I understand is, I used to, because I go to a church that's Baptist. My husband will not go to a Pentecostal church. That's too much for him. He grew up Catholic. So like the most charismatic he's gonna get.
You gotta explain to people, right? Because Catholic churches are very reserved. Baptist churches let loose a little bit, but Pentecostal is when you start singing,
Pentecostal, you're gonna be
dancing.
And you might speak in tongues, everything.
That's how
we're okay with that. So I started being a little conservative until I heard, how people, when let's say a black visitor or a Latino visitor comes and they see me worshiping super extra, like just how I am naturally, that's going to make them comfortable to do so too, and make other people comfortable to do so too. I'm part of the worship team, and I do not tone it down for when I'm up there. I'm just as extra as I would not in the pulpit. And, it blesses who it blesses. It gets on whose nerves, but I feel like that's where...
But you're not there to worship them. You're there to worship God.
But that's where it allows, the different races and different upbringings to come together. There is maybe a more muted person next to me, and there might be... I feel like that's where the multicultural... But there's not really that... When I say multicultural church, it's predominantly white.
Right.
And the area we're into. But there's a reason why we go to all black churches or all Latino churches or all whatever churches, because that's the we're most comfortable in, and you want to feel peace. You don't want to feel like I got to turn my blackness off. I got to turn who I really am off, which I quit turning that off a long time ago. I used to straighten my hairs for interview because my hair was unprofessional.
Mm-hmm.
Then I decided if they're racist, I don't want them to hire me. Let them hate my hair. And so I quit doing that and just been my authentic self, and I'm happy about it. I don't know if everybody else is. So.
I mean, who cares?
I really don't care. I'm living my life. God created me this way.
Amen.
He wanted a little flavor, so he had to.
He wanted the world to see the spice that comes from you.
We actually look like cousins with our hair and with our glasses. It's kind of crazy.
It's the Latino blood. Somos familia. Oh, Lord. Yeah. I do think that, I live in Rockwall, Texas, so there are some churches that are having this conversation and some that are not. But it is on the tip of everybody's tongue, right? But how the conversation is moving forward, I think that, and this is my perspective as a Christian, I think that we won't move forward in our faith in terms of inclusivity if we don't have a genuine conversation and recognize that some feelings are going to be hurt, because it's a hard topic to talk about. And right,
and just because your black friend says she's all right with it
doesn't mean everybody else is.
Yeah, but maybe she's just not a confrontational person, so she's gonna let you say dumb stuff. And you're taking that as acceptance. I won't. I'll call you out every single time.
And that's true too.
You know, like there's some people just gonna let you be dumb. I won't.
Oh my god. It's so funny how she's
like, that's not right. Yeah, that's not how I think. So,
oh my god.
and I think where churches lie on this, I don't even know what I was gonna say. It must have been a lie, but my mom always tells me that if you forget, it has to have been a lie. So that's a lie.
It wasn't.
It wasn't a lie. It wasn't a lie. Church is a different topic. It's hard because Black people, Latinx people that don't want to identify as Black or do identify as Black, it's hurtful to hear people that's supposed to love you say really hateful things about your color.
Yeah.
It's hurtful. And, you know, I heard someone say, like, we celebrated with y'all where you hurt with us. Like, we're the body of Christ. So you wouldn't allow your foot to be cut off and let it gush out. You would do a tourniquet. You would get surgery. Well, part of the body is hurting right now.
Right.
And to not address it and to not care is hurtful. And it's going to damage a lot of parts of the body. And this generation, I mean, our generation did care about social justice. Obviously, we're having this conversation, but the younger ones are really not playing about this stuff.
Right.
They're like throwing full-on protests at 15 years old. I'm like, at 15? What, the one from Nashville?
I mean, and we also need to recognize how the conversation has changed, and also what we were going through at that age. Like, we were dealing with 9/11. We were dealing with a war in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So, you know, as history progresses, we need to also recognize that we did do our part within the framework of what we were facing. Like, we faced 9/11, we faced Iraq, we faced Afghanistan, we faced a great recession. Now we're facing COVID. Like, yeah, we're millennials and we didn't protest in the same manner, but we made do with what we had, and we're still being voices today.
No, for sure. I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying we're more like the in-between. Like, the generation before is like, pfft. And then our generation's like, that's not correct, but we're not going to ruffle any feathers. And this generation's like, F you, Grandpa. Oh, forget you, Grandpa. How dare you say that? And so, like, they just don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to overgeneralize, but
No.
They're not going to stand for racism in their family or out of their family, which is something that's refreshing.
I think it's refreshing, but
I don't want to see families broken up.
Yeah, and I also, and this is maybe just me, I also want to make sure that as they stand up for what they believe, they are also willing to hear out different perspectives and at least comprehend it so that they can develop further into what either they believe, or if, you know, they change whatever they believe, they change it. Because I've noticed that some of these kids are like, this is what I believe. I don't want to hear anything else. And it's like, I get it. But, like, you can't not
shut it out.
You know what I mean? You can't just, like, shut it down and say, my truth is the only truth. And I think that sometimes some of these kids, you know, they're leaning towards that mindset, like groupthink, you know, like 1984, everybody better think the same way or else we're going to cancel you. And I'm just
like, I know. I'm like, if someone tells me to cancel Goya one more again, look,
that's an example. That's an example.
He just said he liked the dang president. I'm not. Look,
literally,
I need to have Panamanian food. I don't care about y'all's problem. Now, I did cancel Starbucks, but that was my perspective. I don't want to, and that's where I don't like, because I don't like anyone forcing me to think. I'm not gonna force you to cancel. You want to drink Starbucks? Drink Starbucks. Or I will cancel. I will never cancel Goya.
I got Goya somewhere in the house too.
It's not happening. I tried it. I tried a different season. I'm like, no.
Sazon.
It was nasty.
Oh my gosh. And that's an example. I'm like, you know,
you're right.
Whether you agree with the president's politics and policies or not, I'm not gonna cancel you and just say, we can't discuss anything ever again. How dare you? And that's what people are doing to this guy who said, hey, I agree with some of your policies, Mr. President. And people are literally like, how dare you? And I'm not, yeah.
People not talking to their family because they voted for Trump. Like, let's not take it to the extreme either. Any extreme in anything is not good.
Amen.
I think,
and I feel like that's where it's going right now.
You're right, but I did like their tenacity.
I do respect the tenacity. I do respect it.
Well, you're right. It's like getting to a groupthink, and groupthink is horrible. Like, my undergrad's in criminal justice, so there is like someone getting mugged, and this person's like getting killed, and everybody thinks someone else is calling the cops. No one calls the cops.
Right.
That's what happens in groupthink. Like, it's like no one's listening unless everybody's doing it, and that's just, then we're gonna be like little robots.
And that's the one thing I caution right now.
Right.
With I love that there's discussion. I love that we're challenging things. I love that. That's great. But let's make sure that we don't just close out everybody who doesn't agree with us and say, if you don't agree with me, you're out. And
we're not change anyone's mind. If you're just kicking everybody out, like, I'm not everyone's mind, but I feel like there was a seed planted, at least from my perspective, to the people that I shared this Christian video with, or the people I share a certain thing. Like, maybe they're like, that's completely false, but they're like, well, it did happen to Stephanie. Like, okay, there's a seed. We're not planting seeds if everybody's hateful and we hate everybody. Like,
exactly. And you said it correctly. We're planting seeds. That doesn't mean we're going to get to see the end result of the seed we planted. Like, Martin Luther planted seeds back in the 1960s, and we're still seeing the fruits of his seed today, and he's not alive. So,
but he can't be like, well, I'm not going to talk to you if you don't agree with me. That's kind of like childish.
That's bigotry. That's people being bigots. So I don't know. I know this. I think that we're seeing big changes in our country, and I hope that at the end of the day, people don't say things that cut other people out of their lives forever, because at the end of the day, we all need to live under this flag in America together. Like, we all, at the end of the day, have to compromise together.
Human beings. We do not function. I don't care how individual and individualistic the culture is. We're social beings that require other people. And so if we're cutting off people left and right, and we just hate every single person and that's not like us, it's not good. You know, some of the best places I ever worked at was because we had a multidisciplinary team. Like CPS, we had the cop there, we had the lawyer there, we had the nurse there, we had CPS there, we had everybody. And here we have the case manager. And why? Because I'm going to bring a perspective of mental health and full-on advocacy. Well, this person might bring in the legality of it. And this might bring in. And so together we will form a better society. And that is with the body of Christ too. And the body as everything. We can't be everything. We have to have different perspectives to come up with the best solution. Because I didn't know that stuff about history. I don't like history. I was like,
she said, I don't like history. I love history.
I read it, but I'm like, ugh.
I love it. I'm like, oh, yeah, so this happened and this time and da-da-da. Girl, I love history. It's like gossip. History is the gossip of our ancestors.
I'm all like, ugh. But what you said, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But see, if I didn't know you and I was like, well, you said something that really messed me up, so I'm done with you, that's just not going to work.
Right. Okay, so let's close it out. One last thing of what you would like to say to the Pure Lunacy audience before we close it out. Otherwise, we'll keep going forever.
Well, thanks for listening. I don't even know what we talked about. I was just talking. I was like, as I was talking, I'm like, oh, I'm hoping it makes sense.
You do. I said Long Island instead of Ellis Island. And you're how sad that is.
You're the history person. What's up with that?
It's been a
a
interwebs.
long year.
Forgive me, please.
So
I make mistakes too.
believe it or not.
Yes, Lord. All right, guys, this is Pure Lunacy. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you
Thank you for
enjoyed,
having
Stephanie. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I'm sure I'll have you on again because it's always a good time chatting.
I'm probably going to be excommunicated out of my church and my family after this. We all good.
Bye.